We're going to get started. Uh-oh.
Is there an after meeting tonight?
Let's try that again. There we go. Make sure all of our audio is working. People are still joining. Okay, well, we'll start. Close this. All right, well, welcome everybody. We're gonna start the meeting now. Hopefully everybody can hear us and get their Zoom set up the way they want to. I'm gonna go through a presentation and then we'll go from there and open it up to questions and hopefully some answers and collect some information from folks. So I'm gonna share my screen. And away we go. So this is the City Government Study Task Force Community Engagement Meeting. This is about the current government structure and the proposed government restructure. Thank you everybody for joining us to learn more about the proposed government restructure and to provide your thoughts and feedback tonight. My name is Porter Arneal, Director of Communications and Creative Resources for the City of Lawrence, and here with me is John Nalbandian, Professor Emeritus of the KU School of Public Affairs and Administration. A little bit of housekeeping. This hybrid meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel. On Zoom, please mute yourself unless you are speaking. Since chats cannot be seen by the YouTube audience, the chat function is turned off. After the presentation, there will be time for public comment and questions. We ask people to keep comments and questions brief. Some questions may require some research. So if that's the case, responses will be gathered and posted as FAQs on the webpage. The meeting is scheduled to go to 7 p.m. and we may go longer if needed, but of course understand if people have to drop off prior. A recording of the video from tonight's meeting and the previous meeting will be available on the city's YouTube channel with links on the community engagement webpage as well. There are more opportunities to provide feedback at the link here that I'm showing, which is our community engagement link for government restructure. You can find that on the city's main webpage. The goals of this are to provide educational background on the current city government structure, to provide background and information on the task force proposed city government restructure, to glean feedback and input to provide more information to the City Commission, ultimately help the City Commission determine what, if any, question or questions they might want to add to the November 2022 ballot. Our current government structure, the City of Lawrence currently operates under a commission manager form of government. The City Commission is our governing and legislative or policy-making body, and the city manager is responsible for the management of city operations and employees. The city manager is hired and supervised by the City Commission. Bear with me 1 second, we have more folks joining. I need to let them in. The City Commission comprises 5 commissioners who are elected at large or citywide to represent the entire community on a non-partisan basis. City Commission elections are held every 2 years, and there are 3 commission seats available in every election. The 2 candidates who receive the most votes in an election are elected to a 4-year term. The candidate who receives the 3rd most votes is elected to a 2-year term. After an election, the 3 newly elected commissioners join the 2 commissioners who are continuing to serve the 4-year terms they were elected to in the previous election. The group of 5 commissioners vote on who will be the mayor and vice mayor for the following year. While not required, traditionally, the 2 candidates who receive the most votes in the most recent election are chosen to serve as mayor for 1 year. In 2021, outgoing Mayor Jennifer Ananda brought forward concerns with the current government structure, including the alignment of skills necessary for the mayoral position with individual capacity and experience, the need for a leader with more longevity, especially during times of crisis, and the value of reassessing structures on occasion. The City Commission worked with city staff to assemble a city government study task force and asked them to review the current form of our City Commission structure and provide any recommended changes for their consideration. John Nalbandian was selected to chair the task force. In addition to serving as faculty and department chair at the KU School of Public Affairs and Administration, he was elected to the City Commission from 1991 to 1995 and was re-elected from 1995 to 1999. He served as mayor of Lawrence twice, once between 1993 and 1994, and again between 1996 and 1997. The Government Study Task Force included Jim Carpenter, Eileen Horn, Dustin Stublingbear, Rachel Reed, Burdette Loomis, Hugh Carter, Bonnie Johnson, John Wilson, Ursula Minor, Sammy Turner, and city staff liaisons were the City Manager Craig Owens and City Attorney Tony Wheeler. The proposed government restructure to evaluate our current system and the presented concerns, the task force was asked to conduct a comprehensive review of 3 things: whether to elect a nonpartisan mayor at large, whether to create district nonpartisan representation of commissioners, and whether to develop terms in office of the commissioners and mayor. And I am now going to turn it over to John Nalbandian to continue.
Thank you, Porter. First, I want to thank the task force members. It was a pleasure working with them. We had advocates for different parts of the questions that we were dealing with, but all in all, I think it was more sort of a culture of inquiry rather than advocacy. And so we really, took a look at, as you can see, we considered community values along with our own experiences with local government. We looked at some academic research. We had correspondence with other local government experts and review of government structures in similar communities. Hang on a second. I want to read for you the values. We considered community values along with our own experiences. And Eileen Horn was one of our task force members. She was instrumental in helping us come up with a set of questions that we informally asked ourselves as we were considering the questions before us. We had 6 questions. Do our proposals provide fair representation for residents? Will they increase voter engagement? Do they recognize the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, ensuring that we hear from voices traditionally left out of our government structures and processes? Do they encourage more civil discourse as a community? Do they produce results that are widely accepted by the community? And do they produce results, importantly, that will lead to effective policymaking and implementation? Go ahead. Ultimately, we decided on the following changes to our form of government. I think we also should notice that as far as I could tell, we have not made changes in our form of government since the form was adopted in the 1950s, when population was something like 20,000 people. So as the former mayor said, it's about time just to kind of take a look at things and see what we can come up with. So first, we recommended the direct election of a non-partisan mayor. Non-partisan, that's an important piece of this, direct election to a 4-year term. The mayor would be elected by the City of Lawrence voters at large. Go ahead. According to the task force, directly electing a nonpartisan mayor to a 4-year term would provide both greater focus and continuity than the current 1-year term. Furthermore, campaigns for mayor could potentially improve our community's discussions over the city's future and increase resident interest in municipal government. There is also one other thing that is not on this list. What a directly elected mayor can do is we can be assured that the person who is elected and who will serve as mayor wants to be the mayor. So that may not always be the case in our present system. The top 2 vote getters, both by tradition, get to be have a term as mayor. They may not have signed up necessarily to be the mayor. So that's another kind of sort of factor, I think, that argues for a directly elected mayor. Next. Second, we recommended the creation of 6 districts in Lawrence. Now, this was an interesting one because while the directly elected mayor for a 4-year term, while we were really, I think over time, we were really on board with that one. The recommendation regarding the way that we would represent residents, either by district or at large, we were more ambivalent about that. We did come up with the 6 districts. I did look, and I looked at some data and tried to determine other jurisdictions that are like ours, what kind of do they have a directly elected mayor? And 70% of those did. So we're an outlier there. But when it comes to district or at-large election, that's really a mixed bag, because we have some jurisdictions like ours that are all at large, some are all districts, some are a combination of district and at large, and some are even where the representative has to reside in the district but is elected at large. So there are all kinds of different ways when we talk about electing the representatives. So let's go to the next slide. What we came up with was that 6 districts would each elect a nonpartisan commissioner who would serve a staggered 4-year term. With staggered schedule, 3 commissioners would be elected every 2 years. So we've had potentially a new group of commissioners, but we would still have the continuity of having 3 on board. Next. So if the city adopted these recommendations, and let's be clear that what we're doing here is we are making recommendations to the city commission. Ultimately, the city commission is the one that has to decide whether or not these proposals will be put on the November ballot. They may choose either the issue having to do with the mayor or the districts, either one of those or a combination. So If the city adopted these recommendations, we'd have a city commission comprised of 7 people, 6 commissioners, 1 community elected mayor directly, and there would be also note that there will be some added fiscal impact if this new government structure is approved. Go ahead. So now we'd like to hear from you, and the question is, pretend you're a task force member, and should Lawrence voters directly elect a mayor to serve a 4-year term? And should we create 6 districts for election of 6 non-partisan commissioners to represent those districts?
Peter, could we go in alphabetical order?
No.
Says the gentleman whose last name starts with an A.
Yes. I ran for city commission in 2011. I moved back to Lawrence in 2002 after having graduated with a 4-year undergrad in 1975. And I'm a native Cairns and originally born in Emporia. I've been a career architect, and I'll make it short. I definitely support these changes, both for commissioners by district and for an elected mayor. I myself never wanted to be mayor, but I've lived in Centennial for 20 years. And I definitely sometimes have spoken on behalf of Centennial neighborhood. Anyway, my point, to make it quick, is in 2011, this is in support of election by district. It was the only time I ran for public office in my life. And it was the spring of 2011, cold weather, and a very poor voter turnout. I believe it's the lowest, it was only 11%. So I would argue that in low voter turnout, it's also more important because certain districts may or may not vote as frequently as the others. So to finish, in 2011, I would have come in 2nd or 3rd, winning a 2 or 4-year term if votes had only been counted east of Iowa. I came in last in every precinct west of Iowa. Hugh Carter was my reciprocal, if you will, coming in last in every precinct east of Iowa, and he won. So I think the comparison, I would have won a 2nd or a 4 or 2-year term if we'd only counted votes east of Iowa. Lastly, I just really encourage, I'm a mayor because mayors make appointments. None of you know it, but I was appointed to Historic Resources by David Dunfield, who was a high school classmate, 1 year younger. And I served 1 term, but it's important who the mayor appoints. So Mike Amix called me and said, Sven, I'm sorry to tell you, you're not being reappointed after 1 term. Usually people are, but Sue Hack's in charge now. She's going to be the mayor and she doesn't want to reappoint you. Well, guess what? Due to the death of the chairman, Greg Hickam, unfortunately by suicide, and attrition of other members while I was on there, I would have been the chairman going into the Orient Hotel review. And it was pretty well known I opposed the project, but I wasn't reappointed by Commissioner Hack. So I'd like to emphasize appointments are very important, as well as election of commissioners. Thank you.
You know, we should also, this is John Albandian, we should also add that while the mayor nominates for board appointments, the governing body as a whole has to approve. Other comments? Jack has a...
Yes, my question is, obviously the commission studied most of this. And my question with the district elected commissioners is, what was the criteria that might have determined that you would get a higher voter turnout, which already is relatively low for commissioners, by districting them as opposed to get somebody elected from a district who could win with a few hundred votes?
Thanks, Jack. We thought there are three advantages to the districts. The first was a more direct connection of district residents to the city government. The second was it's likely to cost much less to run a campaign for a district rather than at large. And that may in fact encourage more people to actually take part and to consider a candidacy. And I think it would bring more knowledge of the district and the district needs to the commission as a whole. So those were the considerations. Now, there's also, though, we have to understand that, or at least consider, that I think in Lawrence, when we think of Lawrence politically and political sort of divisions, we associate those interests, let's put it that way, with neighborhoods. So, you know, we have East Lawrence, North Pinckney, and so on and so forth. The challenge of districts will be something like 15,000 residents per district if we have if we go to six districts. That means that while we will have the informal or maybe formal neighborhood boundaries, those boundaries the district boundaries will overlap and combine neighborhoods that may be good, may be bad. I don't know. But for example, let me give you an example. Like if you consider East Lawrence, for East Lawrence to be a district, East Lawrence, the neighborhood, that sort of the neighborhood concept, would have to extend all the way out to the fairgrounds. You know, and it would have to be, you know, from 6th Street probably all the way down to 31st Street. I don't know. I'm just guessing because I don't know where 15,000 residents are. So I don't know whether that's a drawback or a positive, but I think it's a fact.
Just to follow up, was there any study of other cities that did this, that it actually did draw more voters, or is this the presumption of the logic of the members, or was there actually any study to look to see if that actually occurred?
Jack, the original really kind of a push for district elections over what had been going on in the past came in the 1960s when the concern with civil rights was significant. And so at-large elections were dominated by majority communities, and there was in effect systematic, it turned out, whether deliberate or not, there was systematic denial of representation by minority communities. So that the Civil Rights Act, as it had been litigated and so on and so forth, then mandated in some places after litigation that there be districts. Now, that argument here in Lawrence, I looked at it in terms of the demographics, and it's hard to find a justification on that basis because the minority population is relatively small here. It's, believe it or not, dispersed in the community. And so, you know, that argument of the underrepresented, I mean, we're hoping that district elections would give more voice to those who are not involved as much, just because they will have a particular person that they can go to, and that particular person would have an interest in them. So I kind of rambled on there, but who's next?
Let me, James, we'll go to you, and then we have a few folks in the room here, so we'll turn it over and see if anybody wants to say anything here. Go ahead.
So first, John, thank you very much for all the work you did, and to the commission. I think the task force, I think this is a very valuable thought process, and I think it's very timely. Actually, I think it's overdue, something that I was hoping to see sooner. A couple of questions. Are there particular advantages to having at-large commissioners that, as you are weighing these things back and forth? I like the idea of districts myself, but are there particular any advantages that were very prominent in the discussion of having at-large commissioners? And how did you consider the visionary role of a mayor in this discussion as well? Because I think that's probably one of the things that this particular structure gives us a tremendous advantage, and something that we've lacked is an overriding community vision. Mayors have to run as visionaries of the community, and we've I think unfairly relied on our city managers to fill that role. So that was more of a comment, but I'd like your input on that, and then the other comment about the at-large districts.
Well, the at-large districts, the positives are that you know, the commission as a whole is by design structure is looking at the city as a whole. And so what it also does, it gives individual residents an opportunity to contact whichever commissioner they think is sympathetic to their views. And I'll tell you a little story. When I was on the council, Bob Moody was on the council with me. And, you know, I rarely got a phone call, even though I got more votes than anybody I rarely got a phone call from a resident about a problem or this and that. No, I think I came across as kind of aloof, you know. Bob Moody didn't. Moody was always bringing, you know, those kinds of questions to the council. So one of the positives is that you do get, you know, you have access to that. The other thing is I looked at issues that the council, or I'm sorry, you say council, but the commission has been dealing with over time, and almost all of them are sort of community-wide issues. So that's another in favor of at-large. But I really think the districts, I just think as we get bigger, I think it's harder for residents to connect to the city government. And I think with districts, that's going to be, you know, that's going to be a positive. Now, regarding the mayor, we actually did, we talked about the mayor's role. Mm-hmm. We're not recommending, this wasn't part of our recommendation, but we did want to look at the mayor's role. I think the way we distinguish, a lot of people, when they think of a directly elected mayor, they think of a mayor who has executive authority and who is in charge of the staff and can tell the staff what to do and so on and so forth. the way we conceived of the mayor in this case is we're talking about a facilitative mayor who has the power to convene rather than the power to direct.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's a very important distinction, especially these days when bringing people together seems to be such an important aspect of problem solving, to have a mayor who sees that, not only sees that as a central feature of the role, but in fact, when they are campaigning, those are kinds of questions that can be addressed to the mayor. So we thought the mayor, we identified some responsibilities: preside over meetings of the governing body, vote as a member of the governing body on every issue before the commission, facilitate governing body visioning and strategic planning, provide an annual State of the City address, formally represent the city in ceremonial roles, represent the city in intergovernmental roles for elected officials, and after consultation with governing body members, appoint residents to advisory boards. We were also very much influenced by the city manager's comments that he would be very concerned if we were making recommendations that gave more power to the mayor and at the expense of the other commissioners, because the relationship between the city manager and the governing body, from the city manager's standpoint, Craig, and I know the other city managers, want to be able to have access to each of the commissioners and develop that relationship between the staff and the council. So that's the facilitative mayor that we are conceiving of as this role.
I think that's a very valid concept and very applicable to our community. So thanks for that. That was very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to the room here. If anybody wants to, any comments, please just step up to the podium here.
Hi, thank you.
Just the height if you'd like to.
All right. My name's Kevin Kelly. Actually, I am a person that was in this town when it was 20,000 people. And, the idea of running an election at large was not much different than running one in the districts that are proposed here. Very similar size and doable. I think my biggest concern about our current, and why I think two parts, the district election is important, is first, running citywide campaigns, as you mentioned, it's a challenge, and it limits people's access to engage in the political process. Second, while currently, we have a dispersion of underrepresented populations in our city, by having at-large elections is a way to truly ensure that underrepresentation of underrepresented communities. And while we have an anomaly, and I say that in a positive way, in our current elected officials, I don't think that we should count on that being the case using our current structure. It's also when you look at cities of approximately 100,000 people, this isn't what you see. You see district or a combination of district and at large. And so I really am just supportive of this recommendation. I think it's also, when you represent everybody, you kind of represent no one. So who do you call when your street's bad? Or what do you do when all 5 commissioners are elected from the same neighborhood? So it eliminates a lot of negative possibilities, I think. And as for the office of mayor, I was recently on a group that went to Northwest Arkansas to visit with cities there, and every city had a elected mayor. And that's one of the most prosperous areas in our region. And I think it is, and I don't know that this was on the list, but I think it's important that when we're looking to do things to develop our community, that we have an elected official to represent us. At the last meeting I was at, you know, the mayor who was, I mean, representing us fine, our mayor was, but basically had to say, well, I'll only be mayor until next year. So the mayors, the peer-to-peer relationships don't develop between mayors when they're on a rotating basis. And those structures in any field of having peers that you can call upon to help you in your job are critical. So I would like to congratulate the committee, and I think that the work you did was really good. And I look forward to seeing this on the ballot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Come on up.
I'd just like to point out,
What is your name?
Oh, Chris Flowers. Yeah. That when it comes to minorities, I don't know if you looked at college students, but when it comes to like students living on campus, I think it's 5,000. And so just from that very specific age group, they are very much left out of the political process. So was there any talk about how, like, was there any talk about like how to district up the community, I guess? Because I don't think I think campus should all be included in one district. And I could see potential for like some candidates wanting to, basically gerrymander the city, because Lisa Larson lives close to campus, and if I was her, I wouldn't want to be in a predominantly just college, because I mean, she's a senior citizen. Her views might not match with young people. So I think that would be an argument for districts. I was just going to ask, also, I want to make the statement, I don't think the commissioners should be the ones in charge of districting. Was there any talk about how the town would get districted up, I guess, is what my question is.
I think by law that's the way it's done, that there are requirements for drawing districts, and then and those are objective requirements. And then the commission, and then what happens is, I'm pretty sure what would happen is that the districts, a proposal for districts would be brought to the commission. The commission wouldn't necessarily be involved in the nuts and bolts of how that's done, and the county clerk or county voter, whatever, Jamie Shue would be involved in, heavily involved in that. One thing I would say though, I asked the staff for the addresses of our commissioners over the last 20 years. And then I, plotted them on a map, and there's no pattern. I mean, you'd think there would be, that's the myth. I mean, it's a myth. It's just like.
Well, it's a probability.
It's a probability. Okay. Yeah.
In reference to your question, Chris, Kansas State Statute 12-10A03 is regards how districts would be formed after the vote. And basically what we have is 30 days after the vote, the governing body of the city will draw districts based off of the precinct boundaries that need to be contiguous, compact, and equal in size. That's a brief summary. I am not an attorney, but that's the information we have, just to give us, a sense that there's a structure in place for that.
Yeah, and with college, the consideration of the college students, I looked at was it Census State? Yeah, I was looking at the Census Bureau, and my goodness, the challenges they have in trying to categorize, which students are considered permanent residents, which aren't considered permanent residents. How do we? You should see the income, the challenges determining average income. I wanted to compare us to like Olathe and Shawnee, or a couple of the Johnson County cities, and there was such a wide dispersal. We had all these poor people living here, and then I said, this doesn't make sense. So then I looked at Iowa City and Manhattan, same as us. So it's the Census Bureau acknowledges the challenges in doing the work they do with college towns.
Yeah. Anybody else here in the room that wants to speak?
Dan Dannenberg, 2702 University Drive. We're well past the time for a new structure of city government. It's absolutely shameful that we're using the same structure that was in effect in the 1950s. We need districts, and they need to be reasonably established. I would like to have somebody in my district that I could go to say, hey, I need to do, we need this. How can we do this? Do we give a couple sawbucks to we're becoming more unionized city employees? Do we give a couple sawbucks to the union shop steward to get something done? Or how would that work? I'm tired of being the neighborhood rat. I don't know how many times I complain about cars parked to block sidewalks, and then I have to call the police. Well, the police don't have time or resources, and they don't want to do that. There needs to be another avenue to address that, another resource. We might need something like they have in New York, guardian angels for neighborhoods. We have another problem in neighborhoods is the preponderance of rental properties. The street I live on is almost all rental properties, and it surely shows because they don't mow their yards, they have pile up junk, and it just gets to be a mess. And the planning that goes into what neighborhoods look like, obviously that's a joke. I imagine that the current planning and development director was appointed because the developers and the rental property owners says, hey, yeah, that's the guy we want, okay? He's our man. Well, we have to have somebody else that represents not just special interests like rental property owners, the Department of the developers, the Chamber of Commerce, and then we have a mess in downtown Lawrence. And you can't get access to Downtown Lawrence, Inc. I've asked if I could go to one of their meetings. They receive city money, by the way, and they say, no, you can't come. Well, how is that? They receive city money, but yet they don't want the city citizens involved. And we have a downtown that's becoming a blighted area, basically, with graffiti, homeless people, and semi-talented or not talented musicians patrolling, looking for money. And we need some direct line of communication with the police department. I don't know how you talk to the chief of police. I guess you don't. He doesn't have an email address. I'm going to look up to see what the qualifications are to become a police officer. In some places, you have to be 25 years of age and you have to have 2 years of college education. What do you have to have here in Lawrence? I don't know.
Dan, I'm going to ask you, we're kind of going off topic a little bit because this is about the government restructure. So I appreciate your comments, but I just want to try to.
Well, I'll shut up, but I think that all comes into government restructure because we need a government that responds to interests of citizens other than the special interests. And One of the special interests is the university.
Thank you. Anybody else here in the room? Okay, I turn it back to the Zoom audience. Barry, I see that you raise your hand. Go ahead and comment if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Barry Shalinsky, 645 Connecticut Street. I'm going to make a pitch in favor of, I guess, what I would call a hybrid city council, some elected from districts, some elected at large. The problem with a city council that is elected entirely from districts is that it takes a majority of council members to do anything, to make a decision. So if you've got a council with, say, 6 people, and you've got your one district representative, they might be a very effective representative in some ways, but they could very easily get outvoted 5-1 on certain issues. And so what good does it do you to have this person who represents you if they can't get a majority to go along with them? I would point out that the demographics of our city are not necessarily geographically based in some ways. Our new commissioner, Amber Sellers, lives on the far west side, and yet she won her election on the basis of taking a large number of votes on the east side. And so under our current system, people do feel represented in some cases by folks who do not necessarily live in their part of town. I see that there are some advantages to districts, but I also see that there are some advantages to at large. And I'll just conclude with this. In other cities, I'll use the example of Tampa, Florida. They have a commission or a council with 4 districts and 3 at large. So a 7-person governing body. What that means is that if you are an individual citizen, you have your 1 district representative and you have 3 at-large representatives. That means that when you vote, you are actually voting for a majority of the governing body. Every citizen in the town gets to vote for 4 out of the 7 positions. They have a similar situation in Kansas City where you have your district representative and then you have your district at large representatives. So I think there are some advantages to having a situation where the individual citizen has access, and not just access, but actual accountability from a majority of the members of the governing body who are personally accountable to them and their neighborhood. I think that really gets us the best of both worlds. Thank you.
Thank you. People want to speak, you can raise your hand on Zoom or just indicate. Sven, if you don't mind, I want to see if others want to comment first before we.
That's fine.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, there we go. Rob Sands.
Yeah, hi, Rob Sands, 809 Fox Chase. So I had the pleasure of watching the proceedings through Zoom and of the advisory commission, and there's been a lot of great input tonight, and a couple of things I want to.
I can't understand.
Hey, Rob, do you have? We hear some background sound, and we're having trouble hearing you. Say again.
Is that better?
That's a little better. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sometimes my microphone picks up crazy things, but I'm the only one talking in the room, so go figure. One of the things that Dr. Nalbandian brought up that I think is a very valid point is what the advisory committee looked at as far as the values. And the first question that they started with is, with those list of values, was, does the city structure need to change? And then it was a recommendation based on best practices from other communities that are close to us, that are far from us, that are around our size, that are not. Some of the things that Dr. Nalbandian didn't mention on tonight's meeting, but that the advisory committee looked at was input from city managers, or maybe you did mention this, I can't remember. Input from city managers that have different structures, and looked at some of the pros and cons. One of the key things I think we need to focus on is, number one, do we agree as a community that the structure needs to change, yes or no? And then there can be, there's always going to be desire to know what those districts look like, or could there.
Uh-oh. I think, Rob, I'm not sure.
What's that?
Oh, sorry, you dropped off momentarily. Now you're back.
Okay. One of the things that I would, I know that voter engagement is really a big concern. It's a topic that's come up tonight. And it's a topic that came up a lot during the advisory committee. And I really believe that a change in structure would facilitate better voter engagement. When you talk about, generally Lawrence has about a 70%-ish neighborhood-wise registered voter to population. And so for a district of 15,000 people roughly, that makes about 10,000 folks that are registered voters. 10,000 registered voters in the neighborhood is much more manageable to be able to engage with on a very meaningful level. I'm not really talking about, events or forums or these kinds of things. Those have varying levels of participation, but it's a much more manageable size of a population to have good conversations with folks in that neighborhood. During the advisory committee meetings, I did an informal survey, had over 100 participants in that survey, and it roughly shook out. And my question is going to be, when do we get to see, or do we get to see the results of the citywide survey? I found it interesting that the results from my very informal and unscientific survey of over 100 people bore out that it was about a 50-50 split of those that wanted to see a redistricting and those that didn't. Some of the interesting things, the comments that I won't share all of them, but there was a lot of comments that did not, of folks in Lawrence that did not feel connected to their city government. I really think this is a solution that may not be perfect. It may not bat 1,000 for us, but it will move us in the correct direction of more representative government. Thank you.
Thank you.
On that city survey, by the way, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you want?
I just want to say on the city survey, the results.
Come up to the mic, please.
Yes, I just want to say on the city survey, the results are available on the site. And I think they were running, one was at 75 or 80% for the mayor, being elected at large, and I think the other was around 70%. I might be wrong. It's been a little while since I looked at it, but the results are there.
Yeah, thank you. I since we brought it up, Rob, the survey, actually, if you go to the survey, you can actually view there's a thing that says show word cloud, and that actually reveals all the current survey results and all the comments that people have. So you can actually see, that's the benefit of Lawrence Listens. It's a live online forum. So you can actually see what people are looking at. With that, I want to point out the survey is not a voting tool per se. It's just showing percentages and areas of interest. I really appreciate some of the very thoughtful comments being added to Lawrence Listens too. And I also want to say that we really are just gleaning information to help inform the City Commission so they can have good information in making a decision about what might or might not go on the ballot. Sven, you were going to say something additionally?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a minor point. I definitely agree with Rob's comments he just made, but when Mr. Otten was here in the forum, and while John was speaking next to you, I thought in 2011, my treasurer was Mike Rundle, and he gave me his donor lists from his previous runs. And I'm wondering how, I forget who mentioned it. It might have been you, Porter, that said it looked like it was random where the past commissioners actually lived at. I think by district, we would see donors also fall out more by district, thereby generating less influence in other areas. So I think we need to talk about the effects of how this not only would increase engagement, but possibly increase small donors by each district. And that's another reason I'm in favor of the districts. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to turn credit to Professor Nalbandian, who mentioned looking at the data about addresses and the fact that it was random. So thank you. All right, we're coming up on the hour of 7 o'clock. Is there any last comment that anybody would like to make or question? Oh, one more here in the room.
In this new structure, some attention is going to have to be paid to compensation. The mayor can't be a person who runs gratis. They're going to have a acceptable level of compensation, and they're going to have to be full-time. The other commissioners, I don't know what their compensation is now, but I suspect it's inadequate. So that's in a new structure, that is going to have to get a lot of consideration.
Thank you. Yeah, we did mention that at the beginning of the presentation. This would have some sort of fiscal impact, although we don't know what that is right now. All right, I'm going to do one thing here. And one, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you all joining us tonight and providing your insights and feedback. And I just want to share, make sure everybody can see this link right here, which is lawrenceks.org/engagement/government-restructure. So I gotta say it out. If you go to that link, and you all have all of you on Zoom have my email because you got a response from the Zoom meeting. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if I can help you in any way. And if you go to that link, there's a lot more background information. There is the Lawrence Listens link. There's an email address where you can send comments or questions. So there's a lot more ways to learn more and participate. And I think most importantly, the report is there. The Government Study Task Force report is there, which has a lot of great information and is very comprehensive and thorough. And there's a video as well, which explains a lot of what's going on currently and how this is playing out. So feel free to share that information. As I said, we're really tasked with trying to glean information from the community. for the benefit of the city commission. So that's our main, we're not here to promote anything or advocate as much as we're just getting information for them to make a very well-informed decision. And so with that, I think we will end our time together tonight. Again, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time and energy. And like I said, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or other thoughts. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Porter.